Rightside Nation, what's cracking? It's Mike Hanley here with RightSideNews.com. Just wanted to touch base with you guys. It is June 20th. It's about 10:30 p.m. I just got off work. I want to start by giving a shout out to St. Louis. What's up? Home of the St. Louis Cardinals. Second most world championships next to the legendary New York Yankees. And home of the St. Louis Blues. We only got two teams left, folks, so I'm pulling for them. We lost the St. Louis Rams to, none other than the asshole Stan Kroenke, who brought the team out to L.A. They're now the L.A. Rams. I actually happen to be down here in Southern California. I'm out of Costa Mesa now, in between Huntington Beach and Newport Beach, down here in the OC. Orange County happens to be the most populated area of Republicans. So I want to give a shout out to the OC as well. And also, we should give a shout out to the Las Vegas Knights for going to the Stanley Cup in their first season, their expansion season. So that was a huge accomplishment. But I figured I'll go ahead and cut to the chase now. I put together a video the other day, and it had to do with border security and, kind of what was happening at the border in terms of these parents being ripped from their children. But I think we really need to focus on the terminology that is being used, because I think that is absolutely important. And if I can go ahead and jump back a little bit to a video that I produced on MS-13 gangs and illegal immigration. And this was something that was put together by President Trump on Long Island. And there's been an issue with MS-13 gangs and crime on Long Island. That happened to be an area very close to where he grew up. It happens to be the area where my mother grew up. And these people are now living in a crime-infested area, much because of the influence of the MS-13 gang. And they're an absolutely major topic, and I think it's important to talk about that. And specifically, I'll get into that and why their influence is so important, especially on people that are coming into the country. And so what I did was I sat down and I watched a video from Kirstjen Nielsen, who is the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. It's the third largest agency in the United States government. And I've been really impressed with her, but I want to talk specifically about the terminology that's used. And I think there needs to be a distinction in the terminology that's used. And they talk about parent, and they're using this term parent in a very general sense. And the media is manipulating the term parent. And what I want to focus on is the difference between a parent, a sponsor who sponsors somebody who is going to immigrate to the country legally, and a guardian, and then also those three all lumped together. A parent, a sponsor, and a guardian. I'll lump those three together. The fourth I want to talk about, which is completely separate over here, is a smuggler. And that is a smuggler. That is the point that I really want to make here. We see that there is not a distinction being made between a parent, a guardian, a sponsor, and then number four, a smuggler. And this is a very important point. So let's jump into it a little bit. She talks about separating a parent from a child and why that might happen. She gives two reasons. Is that the parent might be a national security risk, or two, that the parent is accused of human smuggling. Now, there has been a 314% increase of fraudulent claims of family units. So basically, the people that are coming to the border, many of whom are being caught, are claiming to be family units. And this is where it's important to talk about that distinction. So The people that are claiming to be parents of these children don't necessarily happen to be parents. They happen to be some other person, most likely some type of human trafficker or sex trafficker. And when I say most likely, I'm talking about the people that are claiming to be parents but are not. And that's why we're seeing this 314% increase in fraudulent claims of people claiming to be a child's parent. And so, what does that leave you? That most likely leaves you with a human trafficker or a smuggler. And and so when we jump into this, we need to make the distinction between who is considered an actual parent, a guardian, or a sponsor, and what is a smuggler. And what I did was I looked up on whitehouse.gov some of these statistics. And some of these statistics are very interesting. And what I really focused on is I jumped a little bit deeper, and I didn't focus necessarily on the family units, but I focused on unaccompanied alien children. It's called a UAC, unaccompanied alien child. And so what we have here is the increase at the ports of entry in the United States of unaccompanied alien children was 636% from April of 17 to April of 2018. So you're seeing a 636% increase in unaccompanied alien children. So, I mean, these people under the age of 18 are trying to come into our country at ports of entry. That's just the ports of entry. At the border, apprehension of UACs went up 331%. So we're seeing massive amounts of youth trying to get into this country. And we don't know exactly why they're coming in, most likely because our economy is good right now, and they're seeing that this is the opportunity to get into the country, albeit illegally. But I mean, I can't blame them. I mean, these kids, they want to come here, so they're fighting their way into our country. And so I don't blame the kids, but I blame the laws that are in place. And this is what Nielsen talked about. She talked about the laws already being in place. These were laws that were put into place by previous administrations that were not changed by either Bush or President Barack Hussein Obama. And so when these laws haven't been changed, Congress isn't willing to do anything on immigration. So Trump has nothing to do, and neither does his ICE or Department of Homeland Security to enforce the laws. He has no choice because Congress is not willing to put forth some type of measures or some type of bill. The laws are being enforced. And so when these laws are being enforced, that is what is creating the separation, is when these people are coming in, either a parent or a smuggler, these people are coming into the country, and what's happening is there's being a separation of children from the smugglers or the parents. And I think it's important because it actually gives the kids an opportunity to voice what is going on. Now, maybe they can't speak English, maybe they speak Spanish, but it still gives them the opportunity to say, hey, I'm not with my parents. I'm with somebody that I don't know. And I'm sure these kids are probably scared. They might not know what's going on. And that is as it pertains to the families or the family units making fraudulent claims. So that's that specific unit. And then we have these UACs, the unaccompanied alien children. And here's an important stat. And this relates specifically to what I was talking earlier. And it relates to MS-13 gangs. It says more than one-third of the 274 MS-13 gang members that were arrested during Operation Matador, were unaccompanied alien children. So when these UACs had come into the countries, 1/3 of the UACs ended up being MS-13 gang members. So I think what we're seeing here is there's a correlation between the fraudulent claims of family units at the border, unaccompanied alien children, and MS-13 gangs. So we're seeing these people that are trying to get into the country. Maybe they are family units. Maybe these children are with their parents. But we're also seeing in many instances that the children are not with their parents or they're unaccompanied. And when they're unaccompanied, we are not giving them the opportunity for the American dream. And that's why we have to have borders. Because if we don't have borders, these kids who don't have a family structure, they don't have a parent or a sponsor or a legal guardian that are bringing them here. I mean, aside from the fact that they're illegal, they're coming here illegally. Aside from that fact, when they get here, they don't have the family structure and the support that they need to be successful coming into this country. And I think it goes back to the idea that when people come here, they need to come here legally. And if they come here legally, number one, we know who's coming here. We know the intentions of why they're coming here. And number three, that they can help us. And number four, that they are set up for success. And that's what we want. We don't want people to come here and be miserable. We don't want children to come here with MS-13 gangs living a life of crime and having to live in violence, in hatred, in drug smuggling and killing. I mean, I talked about this when I put out the first video for the MS-13 gangs. I mean, these people, like Trump said, are animals. They're not, many of these gang members, they're not killing people with guns. They're now killing people with machetes. You know why? Because it's more painful. They are making their mark. And many times, in order to get into these gangs, what we're seeing is that in order to get into these gangs, they have to do an initiation killing. So they're ordered by the gang to perform a murder in order to get in. I mean, could you imagine? So these are really important parts that are necessary for us to think about. And that's why this whole narrative that the left puts forth, that these children are being ripped from these parents' arms, maybe we're saving these kids. And I think in many cases we are. As I said, 1/3 of the MS-13 gang members that were arrested in Operation Matador ended up being, at one point, unaccompanied alien children. And to me, that is absolutely unacceptable. For all the reasons I listed earlier. There's no structure. They don't have opportunity. They have to live in a life of violence. And so we don't want to see this. We want people to come here and have a life full of, I mean, shoot, it's the life, the liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what this country is based on, and that's what we want people to have. We don't want to set people up for failure. And that's why I think enforcing these laws at the border is absolutely imperative. And it doesn't make sense to do it any other way. I mean, human trafficking and sex trafficking is absolutely unacceptable. It's been going on for years. The federal government hasn't done anything. I believe the CIA and the FBI is absolutely culpable in this. And we need to stand up. We as people need to stand up and make sure, one, we need to look for ourselves. We need to look for Americans. We have the African American communities in our inner cities. We have white people in rural communities. And these people are not being taken care of. they're not being taken care of. Take Chicago, for example. We have African American people who are not being supported by the local governments. We have murders that more people in Chicago in 1 year were killed in Iraq. I don't know specifically what year that was, but that's why people started calling it Chirac. And most of it was black on black crime. Now, I'm not just pointing to the African American community. The white community in rural areas are not being supported as well. Many of those people are on welfare, and they don't have the opportunities that their parents once had. In these jobs, many of which have gone overseas, and that has to be construction, manufacturing. I think manufacturing is the biggest one. We don't manufacture things here anymore. And because we don't do that, many of these manufacturing facilities are in rural places. I used to work for an American manufacturer. They manufacture stainless steel sinks, drinking fountains, bottle filling stations, and of their um, most of their manufacturing facilities were not in very populated areas. They were outside um, the general city limits, if that makes sense. So the manufacturing facilities are outside these general city limits, and that's where a lot of the white community historically has gotten their work. And these are good paying jobs. They pay good, they have good benefits, and these are jobs that people can support their family on. I mean, there are many people that just want to live a simple life. They want to go to work, they want to make their money, and they want to go home to their families. And that's why I think that taking care of Americans first is the most important thing. And bringing back jobs is what Trump is all about. He said he would be the greatest jobs president that God ever created. And I don't think he's lying. And how is he doing this? He's cutting the red tape. So he's cutting out any restrictions on business. And then, two, we have the tax cuts. And the tax cuts are aimed at the middle class. And of course, there are wealthy people who do benefit from these tax cuts. But I think it's also important to talk about the amount of the taxes that are put in. And here's why. When people are taxed at a higher rate, they have less money to reinvest and hire people. When they cannot hire more people, there are less jobs available. So the taxes, along with the cutting of the red tape, the restrictions, it's absolutely necessary. And so we're going to grow these jobs numbers. We're going to grow the number of jobs. We're going to grow the wages within these jobs. So people are going to get paid more for doing the same job. And then on top of that, we're going to be able to take care of our people. And if we can take care of our people, we can get more people making more money, saving for their kids, for their retirements, for their education. And then once we have taken care of the people of the United States of America, we can go ahead and we can figure out how we can help immigrants come into this country legally, and make an honest living. And it's not always going to be easy. It's not easy for the first generation of immigrants. I mean, Nick, you're uprooted from your home country to a place maybe you don't know anybody, maybe you don't have an understanding of the culture, but if you're brought here, we can set you up for success, you can support your family, you can make an honest living, and then the families have an opportunity to move forward, to grow, to build wealth over time. And one of the things Trump said, he's going to get rid of the death tax. I mean, what you're seeing here is a lot of times people have a lot of money, they die, and the government takes half of their money. I mean, it's absolutely insane. That's how insane it is. And so, if we eliminate the death tax, we can allow people who immigrate to this country to keep more of their money. The money stays with their families, and their families can use that money to reinvest it, to buy homes, to start new businesses. to pay for their own retirement. I mean, one thing that I was talking to with about my buddy is the amount of waste that's in Social Security. And I think this relates directly to investments in the death tax. Because what we're seeing here is in Social Security, that is something that we pay into. We have to pay into it. Like I said, I used to work for a manufacturer. I used to pay 6% of my 6% of my biweekly salary went into my 401k. And then on top of that, the company matched 3%. And that number, the 3% plus the 3% match plus the 6% that I was putting in on my salary on my biweekly check was less money that I paid into Social Security. So all of this money is going into this Social Security. And I'm not saying Social Security is necessarily a bad thing, but if I could have opted out of Social Security, I mean, who knows if I'll ever get it. But the whole idea is if I could opt out, I could either use that money to invest in my own business into something that I want to do, or I could invest it into retirement, or I could spend it at local small businesses, or I could spend it on corporations. It doesn't matter how I spend the money, but the point is, if that money can be passed on from a death tax, it can go into the next generation, just like instead of being taxed by the government. And I think Social Security is essentially the largest fraud that we have in the government today. They're essentially just taking money away. And what if that money for Social Security isn't used? I mean, there isn't a direct correlation between the two, but I think you guys understand the point that I'm trying to make. And the point is let's have people come here legally. Let's prevent people from being smuggled in by MS-13 and other gangs. Let's set people up for success on a merit-based immigration policy rather than a lottery, and make sure that people who come here for the right reasons, they're equipped for the transition into American lifestyle, and they can set their family up for generations to come. Because I'm sure as hell not first generation, and I know it wasn't easy for my grandfather's dad. There's a picture of him in New York working on the shipyards where they used to work their asses off. And I can tell you, all these guys, they had their caps on, they had their suits on, and they're working. They're working their tails off. My point is it's not always easy the first go around, but as you can grow with your family, build a foundation for your family, get acquainted with the culture, and assimilate. Assimilate is really the word that I'm looking for. You can assimilate to the country and to the culture, and then you can become an American. And becoming an American gives you this opportunity that you don't have really in any other country. And that is, like I said, the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that is done, in my personal opinion, by believing in a power greater than yourself, believing in a God. It's done by hard work, and it's done by loving your family. And so I just kind of wanted to drop in and talk a little bit about, what's happening at the border with the family units and the increase of fraudulent claims of family units, and then also the unaccompanied alien children and what is going on with these children once they come here. And the whole idea is setting people up for success, coming to this country legally, and living a long, happy, prosperous life. So that's just a message that I want to put out tonight. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's certainly a pleasure. This is Mike Hanley with RightSideNews.com. Thank you so much, Right Side Nation. Don't be left, be right.